And near the end, the Archbishop of Paris and the choir, which included a choir of children, led everyone in singing the Our Father in Latin. And I think that it ends with these words, "Sed libera nos a malo," deliver us from evil.
Before we continue, we invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.
This morning, the United States is targeting ISIS in Syria with airstrikes. Israeli strikes in Syria going on today as well. Let's go to Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. Joe, how does the Syrian situation affect the war in Ukraine?
Hey, Bob, good afternoon from Kyiv. It affects the war very much, although we don't quite know exactly how it's going to shake out. But you know, as I've seen many different analysis of what's happening in Syria, I don't see Ukraine mentioned very often, but Ukrainians are keenly paying attention. Russia had a naval base there since 1971, since the Soviet days on the Mediterranean coast of Syria. All of these things are now collapsing with the fall of the regime, the Assad regime, which Russia had propped up. And so it does affect very much. In fact, we had the reports over the weekend that Russian bombers were taking off, and we were sort of expecting another of the usual attacks here in Ukraine. But nothing happened. And I think, they have to maneuver their resource. They're very busy right now maneuvering their resources to get their resources out of Syria. And I think, there's a sort of a happiness among Ukrainians for the Syrian people that they've been able to get rid of this regime. But you see a big difference between, for example, Ukraine's 2014 revolution and what's happening in Syria. In 2014, when the Ukrainians got rid of that pro-Russian regime, it was incredibly well organized by the people. And there was no, even though the police and everyone sort of, the whole state collapsed, there was no looting, really no violent crime. We're not seeing that situation in Syria, and that's obviously one of the concerns. To what degree will Islamist radicalists be taking charge? So people are watching that carefully. But there is a sign that at least this is causing some problems for Russia. And in fact, President President-elect Trump, when he was in Paris for the reopening of Notre Dame cathedral, tweeted, and I think we'll talk about that in a second. It was an extraordinary thing that President Macron did diplomatically, especially for Ukraine in Paris over the weekend. But Trump tweeted, "Assad is gone. He has fled his country. His protector, Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, was not interested in protecting him any longer. There was no reason for Russia to be there, meaning in Syria, in the first place." And he continued, Trump continued, "They lost all interest in Syria because of Ukraine, where close to 600,000 Russian soldiers lay wounded or dead in a war that should never have started and could go on forever." This is interesting because here he's, Trump, President-elect Trump is actually is being critical of Russia. We've seen that a little bit in the past few weeks, where he was also criticizing the BRICS alliance between China, Russia, and other countries trying to compete with the American dollar. So we do see a bit of a tough stance. And I think this is where we have to look at what happened over the weekend in Paris with the reopening of Notre Dame. And Bob, I was thinking, in a normal, peaceful time on a Saturday afternoon, I'd be watching Notre Dame football. But instead, I was watching the events at Notre Dame de Paris because Macron very, I think, meticulously invited key players in the free world. Trump sat next to Macron during the ceremony. President Zelensky was invited. You had Prince William, First Lady Joe Biden, and all the representatives of countries that in some sense have freedom or stand for democracy. While the axis of Beijing, Moscow, and Iran were not within those walls. And before the ceremony, the reopening ceremony, Macron organized a private meeting with President Zelensky and President Trump. And afterward, Trump, we see a shift that's happening. Now Trump is saying that it's Ukraine and Zelensky who are willing to negotiate. And a few months ago, there was more of a sense in the world of Trump that it was Putin who was willing to negotiate. But now we see a shift saying that Ukrainians are the reasonable ones. And President Zelensky did clarify. He said afterward at a press conference in Paris, he said, yeah, we would like to have a deal and negotiate, but we do have to remember that Putin does not want this war to end. We've had negotiations with Putin before after 2014. So there still are points there to discuss and debate. But it did seem some kind of awakening there. at Notre Dame, and there was a couple of interesting moments there. You had when Zelensky entered, he was given an ovation by everyone, including all the firefighters and the workers to rebuild the cathedral. And there was a moment where Zelensky was sitting next to an African leader, and he was asking the African leader what page to look at in the hymnal. And he's got this whole war on his shoulders, but still they're respectful enough to be participating in the ceremony. And near the end, the Archbishop of Paris and the choir, which included a choir of children, led everyone in singing the Our Father in Latin. And I think that it ends with these words, "Sed libera nos a malo," deliver us from evil. And as I heard that, and I looked the camera pan to the face of Elon Musk, who has not necessarily been a clear voice for Ukrainian victory and standing up to Russia, to Trump and to Macron, and everyone there together saying, deliver us from evil. And there was this sense that maybe Macron was trying to, as we go into 2025, to bring together these leaders to say, we need to find our strength. We need to believe in ourselves as Western civilization. And, Ukrainians are fighting and bleeding for everything that we claim to believe, and bringing everyone together in this moment of sort of like a forge of the forces of light, as so much of the world is on fire.
A lot going on in the world, and just to send you off on a positive note, your alma mater, Notre Dame, ranked number 5. Joe, how about that?
Okay, so they'll be in the college football playoff.
There you go.
There's light all around.
We'll try to keep you connected, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?